This is TWiT.
Last Tuesday, as I mentioned, Microsoft issued fixes for 87 security vulnerabilities. So yeah, a slow month, but only when measured against everything year to date. Those 87 fixes included a pair of critical remote code execution flaws. Actually, I think there were 11 of them in total, but there were two that stood out. One was in the core Windows TCP/IP stack, and another was in Microsoft Outlook. And I'll come back to the rest in a minute. Or come back to those two in a minute. There were also 9 other critical flaws. There were 75 ranked as important and 1 classified as only being moderately important. And of course, they collectively affected Windows, Office, Office services, web apps, Visual Studio, Azure, .network, Microsoft Dynamics, open source, Exchange Server, and the Windows Codex library. And the good news is none of those are known to be under attack. However, 6 of the vulnerabilities were listed as being publicly known at the time of release. So a good thing to apply. Now, hopefully most of our listeners will have perked up or perhaps started digging a new bunker for themselves at the mention of a core flaw in the Windows TCP/IP stack. Those are never good. And did I mention that this one, once it is weaponized from being merely a blue screen of death crash at the moment into an active remote code execution attack, everyone who has looked at it is saying that it is 100% wormable. So what that means is all of these instances of Windows which have any public presence on the internet have a TCP/IP stack outwardly facing on the net and are subject at right now, prior to last Tuesday, to at minimum a crash. A so-called, they call it denial of service, because if your server crashes, your service is denied. But right now it's crashing. That's not difficult to do. Everyone is expecting this will mature over time. Rapid7 and McAfee both have good write-ups about it. Here's how McAfee summarized the situation. They said, today, Microsoft announced a critical vulnerability in the Windows IPv6 stack, which allows an attacker to send maliciously crafted packets to potentially execute arbitrary code on a remote system. The proof of concept shared with MAPP, the Microsoft Active Protection Program members, is both extremely simple and absolutely reliable. It results in an immediate blue screen of death. But more so, it indicates the likelihood of exploitation for those who can manage to bypass Windows 10 and Windows Server 2019 mitigations, meaning the things that are necessary to mature this from a crash to a remote code execution. Everyone is thinking it's probable. They said the effects of an exploit that would grant remote code execution would be widespread and highly impactful, as this type of bug could be made wormable. They said for ease of reference, we nicknamed the vulnerability Bad Neighbor because it is located within ICMP v6 Neighbor Discovery Protocol using the router advertisement type. Now, nobody has published yet a proof of concept, but it's regarded as imminent at this point. Rapid7 said, if you're in the U.S. and we're waiting for an October surprise, look no further than CVE 2020-16898, which is a remote code execution vulnerability in the Windows TCP/IP stack, or what our own Todd Beardsley likes to call exploiting poor implementations of core IETF RFCs, unquote. They said the vulnerability arises when the TCP/IP stack does not properly handle ICMP v6 router advertisement packets. Successful exploitation requires sending specially crafted ICMP v6 router advertisement packets to a remote Windows computer and could give an attacker the ability to execute code on the target server or client. It carries a CVSS v3 base severity score of 9.8 because, yeah, it's that bad. It would be a 10 if it existed now in the wild. If there was public proof of concept code, it would be over. We're talking about any presence of a network, of a Windows network stack on the internet. So they said, our talented crew of Rapid7 vulnerability researchers have a technical analysis up on attacker KB, and security firm McAfee has their own technical analysis. Their research and engineering teams note that the Microsoft-provided exploit is both extremely simple and perfectly reliable and results in an immediate blue screen of death. They said, before we go any further, we would like to strongly encourage you to patch this vulnerability if you are running Windows 10, Windows Server 2019, Windows Server Core 1903, 1909, or 2004. You really don't want to mess around, they're saying, when the word wormable is being used and so many eyes are on the non-BSOD prize of a fully working RCE. If you cannot patch, consider disabling ICMP v6 recursive DNS server, that's RDNSS, as a workaround. He said, which is unfortunately only available for Windows 1709 and above. On the other hand, that's all recent Windowses. And then they have a PowerShell command that I have in the show notes. Again, it's hard to imagine that somebody has not updated, but it's only a week old, and it's really important. And I mean, this is a potentially internet meltdown scale vulnerability if somebody figures out how to turn this into a full working remote code execution exploit. We know that reverse engineering is now being done on a monthly basis. As soon as Microsoft updates something which is really bad, like they tried to do with Zero Logon a couple months ago, and that's been a disaster. So here we have something even potentially more serious, because remember, Zero Login, you've got to already be in, and then you can use it to gain access to an enterprise's domain controller. This is any Windows instance, any Windows stack exposed publicly. Again, it's not immediately weaponized, but everybody's working on that right now because this carrot is so big and juicy. They said, this is Rapid7. As noted above, there are many folks who have access to the known BSOD exploit and more who are currently burning through, this is Rapid7, burning through cases of Mountain Dew while working to replicate the BSOD, then to weaponize the unpatched vulnerability. In the short term and possibly long term, they're saying, you should be more wary of disruption and distraction campaigns using this weakness, especially since IPv6 is very likely running on your internal network, where bad neighbor attacks are really most likely to occur without you being aware of it. They finish, you and your organization should really be prepared to have between 1 to 5 critical patch now events each month for the foreseeable future. That may seem disruptive, but the spate of critical bugs in core business and remote access technologies has become the new normal.
Nightmare.
And the only way to handle it is to make it part of the plan. I wanted to go all the way through that because I thought what Rapid 7 was significant. I mean, and Leo obviously caught your attention. Yes. I mean, if we objectively look at how bad and how frequent these serious problems have become, it is
shocking.
It is really.
Why would anybody use
shocking.
Windows? It's just ridiculous. Just stop.
Yes.
Stop the insanity.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.